Hey guys, welcome. Thank you for joining. Um, I just wanted to quickly thank you all for joining and be here today, and also give the word to our CEO, Andrew Chung, who will be hosting this webinar along with me.
Hello. All right.
Yeah,
So
also,
yeah. Go ahead, and then I'll chime in, Amanda.
I was just gonna say that this is very exciting for us, and we were very, very excited. So, uh, we're glad to have over here Phil and Greg, and I'm gonna let Andrew give the introduction because I know they are friends from a lot of time, and who better to make an introduction than a friend, right?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So yeah, welcome everyone, and I'm really honored to have these two guests here for our second webinar, and I've known. First of all, let me introduce Phil. And he's the CEO of Retreaver. I've known him, I don't even know how long, maybe like all the way going back to COVID days when he was over at AXA, and so it's been amazing to see his career path, from there to going on to Retriever, and now he's the CEO, and just a lot of like really good, high visibility in our industry, just amazing, knowledge base on the pay per call side, and just everybody pretty much knows Phil and Retriever. So welcome. I would just let's give good welcome Phil here, and then Greg is the CEO of Standard Information, and also I started working with him way back when I used to be head of pay per call over at VisitQuad, but then actually my position morphed into not just doing pay per call but also on the data ping post side of the business, and during that time, I got to know him because he's also head of BlueLink. And so, from then, my career also changed to, starting my own company at 18 Work. And then, we just had a really good rapport. And also, another thing is that both Phil and Greg lives in New York, so we also get to see each other locally. And on top of that, all the shows, whether it's ASE or Contact.io or Lead Generation World and what have you, we go to other cities and then we run into each other there as well. So, and so Greg also has very high visibility and on the lead side of the business, and so I really feel honored to have both of them as our guests today. So let's welcome them.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I can't believe you mentioned COVID. That seems like yesterday. I feel like, is that something that we're referring to as like a benchmark in the timeline now?
Yeah.
No, thanks, Andrew, for having us. I'm super excited for this. Yeah, Andrew, it's we've known each other for a long time, and Amanda, thanks for putting this all together and for having us on here. And Phil, I couldn't think of a more worthy opponent to go against today. I mean, I really like Retreaver. I'm super familiar with the platform. It's an awesome tool, and it is definitely the one I like to go against. So.
Absolutely. I mean, Greg and I, we go way back. Huh? We used to buy and sell from each other back in the day. So, yeah, there's definitely some relationships that we've had for some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually been also lucky enough to know a lot about you guys because the team speaks very highly of you both. We have a lot of work with Retriever and standard information, and it's really a pleasure to have you both.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, basically, we're gonna cover this is the agenda that we're gonna cover today, and we're gonna debate between different rounds, and each one of Greg and Philip is going to have a little moment to defend each side and talk about highlights and things that could really be useful for you guys to know. Um, and then we're gonna have a quick Q&A side, so you guys can leave questions on the comments and we can go over them. They're gonna show up on screen, so don't be afraid of leave any questions.
Cool.
Okay, and I wanted to start with this one. Uh, because I had an interesting question on the forms. You know, the form that you guys filled when you sign up for the webinar. Someone left a very interesting question,
Mm.
and I wanted to start with that.
All right.
Um, yeah, they were saying that something that they thought is that it felt easier to get into the lead market instead of calls market.
Mm.
It's like it was saying that calls bring higher margins and more structure, so it's way easier to start on leads than calls. And I wanted to have you guys input on that and how's your take on entering the calls market and the leads market. If you want, Philip, you can start with calls market since it's the one that they pointed out that it has a lot of structure and it's more difficult than leads.
Yeah, so there's really the call side has two aspects to it. You can be a producer or a broker, right? So you can either generate your own traffic, whether it be from your own call center or through social media, Facebook, Google, whatever form you do. Like you can even do the traditional mailers. But when you're doing that, there's a lot more investment on your personal investment into the project, right? When you're brokering, that's how I personally started in this industry. I started brokering, so I would find a buyer that would offer me, I don't know, $40 on a call, whether it's in health insurance or debt settlement, and then I would purchase in large bulk calls at like 35 to 30. So in between, I would make that margin. For me personally, that worked out because there was not a lot of initial investment. It was just making sure the deals were done. Me as the network, I had to essentially prove my value, and that was consolidating data and also ensuring that the people that I was purchasing the calls from were producing quality products because it only takes one or two calls for you to lose your buyer. I mean, Andrew and I, we've gone through this churn in the past where, buyers are like a rotating door, publishers are like a rotating door. So your value as a network is to produce the best quality to ensure that you're monitoring it because one day a source might be very good, the next day they switched it up on you and suddenly all that traffic goes out the window. So as a network, it's very easy to quickly get started, but you don't want to do that long term. You want to add value to your business. So you want to start generating your own traffic in one way or form. For me personally, the way we did it was we started creating our own landers, sending traffic that way. We worked with affiliates that generated traffic that way. We also opened up our call centers, so we were able to generate traffic into verticals like auto insurance and health insurance. Well, let your 2 cents there, Greg.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're being extra kind to me and throwing me kind of a softball right to start off with. So it's not exactly fair, but yeah, I mean, I kind of came in from the opposite way. So my first company, we got in on the lead side. Especially at the time, leads were is kind of similar to what you're saying, Phil. It didn't take a whole lot of capital investment. It was a lot of deal making. It was kind of a similar setup where you could buy leads for a certain amount and sell them for a higher amount. We started with Ping Post from day one. I think, as my understanding is, Ping Post is a little bit older technology. So even dating myself a little bit, but 8-9 years ago when I started in the space, it was still very established. And so setting up a ping tree and setting up a Ping Post system wasn't super novel sort of setup, and so it was a fairly easy thing to get started. And since leads are you're not dealing with a live call, it is you have some flexibility on the timing, you have some flexibility on things going back and forth. So it was a decently easy thing to set up. I will say that there's a lot of data that goes into leads, and so there is more fields, and integrations tend to be a little bit harder. Not that I should be giving away some free punches here, so it's not always necessarily smooth sailing, but yeah, it is, I think, a good spot to jump in.
Yeah, I think something that you mentioned a lot when we talked before about this, it's that uh, leads is very, very like flexible in terms of setup and running the platform and everything. So you were very, very, very focused on that, and I do agree with that. I don't know if you,
Yeah,
Andrew, also want to
yeah,
change.
yeah. I mean, I'm a little biased because I started out in the pay per call, and the data ping post came later. Uh,
Yeah.
the one challenge for for the data ping post that I've always, I'm more of a like traditional sales guy, that kind of dabbles into tech, but also like, I mean, the recent generation of folks, like, they want to run the business, but they don't even want to touch the platform, and hence that's why actually 18 Work Business grew, because I had a lot of clients that come to me and says, I don't know how to media buy, whatever, but I don't know how to like set up things on a call tracking platform or lead tracking platform. So help us out here, right? And so that's what we do. But I mean, even 8-9 years ago, like when you're running a when you're even like an affiliate manager, you were kind of expected to know how to navigate through and even set up a campaign yourself, right? And so I mean, back then, I mean, when I got introduced to leads, I mean, the platform that we were using, and this was back when I was at Visicua, it was Leadspedia, and having to go through all the dupes and sub IDs and field translations, and during the returns by the 10th or whatever, so you make sure that you push the return to the publishers. I mean, that compared to just call is like, you have a duration, and if it didn't meet, then that's it, like you're not getting paid. So we didn't have to do a lot of returns and all these field translation, whatever. So from that standpoint, I always felt that getting into call was a lot easier, because especially back in those days, because it was a static campaign. It was very BD, business development type of work. Like, hey, like, how much can you pay me for for auto insurance call? Okay, and then you turn around and you go find, like when you're a network, you kind of find the publisher, and as long as there's a margin, you set it up, and then you just sit and watch. And of course, there's other challenges, like transfer on an inbound line, or like fraudulent call. But regardless, I mean, everything has challenges. I think my 2 cents to this is that it depends on your personality. I think some people are more like kind of like they gravitate towards the pay per call because of that, and then some people rather do data because of just kind of the mental activity that you have to go through to manage the campaigns, and dealing with the buyers and publishers. Now, but since then, I mean, even pay per call has gotten complex. Finally, I mean, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago, and more and more people started to do like RTV routing, and ping posts, on the call, like ping posts of like for the call, right? And so now, like you're not really talking so much of like static campaign, like how much can you pay me, but let's give me the spec, and let's set it up, and let's look at the conversion rate and RPC. So the language for pay per call has changed quite a bit, and it's gotten closer to the activity that you would do on the data side. So I've watched the evolution. So now it has gotten a lot more complex, and there's a lot of technology piece to it that you have to understand, and all the integration and different things. But so it's got like now, like leads and calls now, it has different set of challenges. So I don't know which one is more of a easy way to get in, but certainly both are profitable. And also it depends on the type of buyers, right? So you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but like on the lead side, a lot of home services traditionally, they're still gravitate towards the leads, and because they have a traditional call center where they want it, and they want to work the leads themselves to turn them into appointments. But then you have like auto insurance and health insurance guys that have huge appetite for calls. So it just also depends on which vertical you want to play in. So
I'll touch on a few points that you mentioned, right? So you said,
All right. Let's take the first crack at that.
oh, apologies, but
Okay.
you mentioned the relationship aspect. I think on the call side, the relationship aspect is still a critical piece of the puzzle. The reason why is for you to become profitable is really maintaining a really good relationship with your buyers, because you need to understand what things are missing from your calls, right? So if your buyer is communicating this aspect of, hey, I'm getting a bunch of calls that might not be qualified in one way or form, that allows you to pivot and adjust and make sure that the traffic sources that you're utilizing are actually generating the correct type of traffic. Now, that does require you to maintain, have conversations. When I was doing pay-per-call in that aspect, I was on the phone all the time with my buyers and say, hey, tell me if you got any issues, and then I would make adjustments. That was the value I brought. If I was generating the traffic myself and I was bringing a bunch of traffic, but none of them were really qualified, I would have to make adjustments in my ads and running, or Now, you're absolutely right. I mean, the world is changing. We're rotating, and technologies such as RTP has added a level of complexity, I would agree, to the paper call industry. It's no longer just, hey, send me calls and we'll deal with the problems later. It's, hey, we got to set up everything, make sure everything is copacetic, we're getting the right responses. But there is an added benefit that we really should touch upon, right? So with RTB, or let's talk about static campaigns, right? Static campaigns back in the day, if I send you the call and you had no buyer to take the call, or the buyer was just having a technical issue, I just lose the call. So all that money I spent trying to generate that call is gone. The benefit of RTB in this case is I can check before that call is being released. I can check what I potentially can make from that call before I release the call, right? So if I have a plethora of buyers, I can get all the bids in, right? I know that all the buyers are available, and then I can pick and choose or cherry pick which buyer I'm going to send it to. So that is the added benefit of RTB, and I think that's also part of the reason why it's been adopted so much in the call space. I'm sorry I interrupted you, Greg, but I'm going to let you take it.
No. I mean, I actually have. I have nothing to argue with you on that point at all. I mean, I was just going to pick up on another point that Andrew Chung made. That especially like kind of around the complexity points. This is kind of where we're kind of falling on this one right now, where you kind of brought up how especially legacy platforms had a ton of different settings, and it was hard to navigate through all this stuff. And that's on our side, one of the things we've added a lot of AI, like integration matching, code writing. We've added all these things in, and I'm sure Phil's doing kind of the similar thing, that we're the way the technology is moving and the way customers are moving is they want exactly what you said, Andrew. Like, they want a platform that they can either, like, with very little context, understand and run themselves, or that they can get someone else to kind of do it for them, and it's easy to use. And so
I would agree with you on that, Greg. I think on both sides, even with our companies, there's been a full court push. When RTB came out, or any form of it, there's an added complexity. You needed to know the technical aspect of how to set up an API. At least I can speak for Retreaver. Is we've made a full court push into making it as simple as possible for the consumer to set up any API to communicate. The reason why is we don't expect you to have somebody technical in your company. We don't expect you to come in and know. All we expect you to do is to know what the RTB ID is and place it in, and we basically do the rest for you. And if we can't do it for you, we literally give you step-by-step instructions. So at least I think that's the same across with you, Greg, where there's a full court push to make it as user-friendly as possible, because we understand that the whole process has complexity to it.
Exactly. And I think that's exactly, we had the AI code writer, so you can write out, like, it'll write in the integration for you. And then we added an AI helper now, so you can chat with an AI bot that'll walk you through how to do things. Because, I mean, everything is just getting, there's, our clients come in, maybe they don't even know what API means. They've never touched that sort of thing before. And so, as the space is getting, it's moving faster, I think, I'm curious what you guys think on that, but it seems like every year it gets, faster, more things are going on. There's more services being connected. Buyers are getting, a little bit more savvy. It takes a little bit more to run these, and the scale is potentially a lot bigger because the market's growing quite a bit. But it's not like it was where I think it maybe was easier 5-10 years ago when you could just set up something really simple. It was static, or you had, one buyer, and it was not a very complex setup. And now I think it, as things have evolved, they've gotten a little trickier.
Yeah, I mean, a little trickier, I think, is at least from the service provider side, it's become a nightmare. But we can't just sit still. So
exactly,
really growing with it, making changes, creating new features, functions, transparency. That's the name of the game, and that's how you're going to kind of be able to move with the tide.
Yep.
I think that's good for our industry, because now, compared to a few years ago, just the minimal entry level in terms of like trying to get in and play in our space. Now you have to be kind of tech savvy, and or at least if you don't, then you have to have the resource to be able to do that. Before literally someone can just jump in and like I know somebody, and I know this person, and let me sit in the middle, and I don't know what I'm doing, but like let's just kind of make it happen. And it wasn't that bad, but I'm saying like now it requires a little bit more resource and thoughtfulness in order to understand our industry, even from the technology standpoint, to run it successfully, whether it's on the call side or the lead side. So
yeah, I would absolutely second that. I also think there's a little bit of like a tech's arms race. I mean, as we've been building up the feature sets on the platform, we want to make it. It's like we want to make it as simple as possible for the client, so we want to make it really easy to run. But then we have to get so much more technical on the platform side. We have to be able to like swap out leads if they're timing out, have dynamic settings, to be able to, like, if something gets post rejected, post it to the second or third place buyer, if late bids come in, swap them to different people around, and like make it so anybody can run this. And I think it's yeah, I mean, I'm curious, Phil, on your side, what you're seeing, but like it just requires a platform and it requires a tech stack that is so much more sophisticated than they used to be.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the call tracking platform like Retreaver, like 2 years ago and today, it's a completely different infrastructure. The amount of work that goes on the back end, when a user goes onto the platform, it seems simple because it's by design. But on the back end, all the complexities that we put in there, the speed, the responses. The internet is the internet, but there's only so much. There's a limit to the internet and speed and human nature. So we were discussing this a while back, Greg, but like for us, it's like, okay, we can't put the cat back in the bag with all this technology that's coming out. So how do we fix this problem? 2 ways. One is transparency, so everybody knows exactly what's going on because they can see it. And the second thing is to provide the features so they can work through those issues that they might be coming into. And I'm sure we'll discuss this later down the road about some of the complexities with RTB. I don't want to get into it early, but that is something we will discuss.
Yeah, I actually want to chime in there because when I was prepping everything for this webinar, I talked with a lot of team members, and something that they highlighted about you, Phil, and Retriever, it's that you were constantly making updates and changes, and that you really care what the team said. It's like a team member was working on a setup and everything, and they gave you some feedback or something, and you take it into account, and you made it an adjustment. So I think that's really, really valuable, which is making the platform user friendly. And for you, Greg, they were highlighting also like the support that you have and being in contact constantly with the user. So I do think that those are two things that are really, really important for starting on this on leads on calls and being user friendly.
Well, I mean, and I'm gonna let Greg speak to this, but like we have 3 pillars in our company. The first one is innovation. So the subject matter we just spoke about is constantly innovating to create features based on feedback from the client. So some time back, we started saying like, let's just listen to the problems, not just listen to what people want, but the problems, and then design features that can fix those problems or help with those problems. The second pillar that we have at our company is the client success, client services. Our team takes a lot of time and dedication to our clients to understand like what their problem is. They might want to do one thing, but there might be a better way to do it. So part of that boils down to how our team responds, how our team looks at a problem, how our team is trained. And the final pillar, which is also very important, is reliability. So being up for a company like us is very important because we have industries that rely on us. We have the insurance industries, we have the financial industries. When we're unstable or down, that impacts those industries at a pretty significant level, where you see a huge financial drop for them. Even being down for an hour means a lot of money loss. And the same thing could be said for Greg.
Yeah, absolutely. We have very similar ethos at Standard Information. So I mean, first and foremost, especially since we're still on round 1 in profitability, is we've found that support and profitability go just hand in hand. You can build the best platform, it can do all the coolest things, but if the client doesn't know how to use it properly, or they can't find the setting, or they don't have it set up correctly, it means nothing and it could actually hurt them. And so, we spend so much time on trying to be really responsive, providing consulting, providing like that access. We put in the AI chatbot that has all of our documents in there, so you can chat with it at 2 a.m. and ask it what stuff does and how it should work. But we really found that was like the key. And then, the technology, the reason we got into this space was just, we felt things needed to move faster. There needed to be a better solution. These platforms need to be able to do more and be able to get them done better to be more profitable for clients, especially when, if you're not doing it, your competitors might be.
Yeah, like I second, third that, in terms of, the customer support and the responsiveness. And, where we sit in with A-Teamwork is obviously there are a lot of clients that rely on us to actually do that work of, managing Retreaver or, standard information or other call tracking and, lead tracking platforms. So, what we recognize immediately is how important it is for us to have good relationship with all the tracking platform providers, where we on, our clients' behalf are managing those. And so that's like priority number one for us. And we have seen many times when if we manage it properly or without having to bring in any new buyers or public, just by having accurate reporting or understanding what actions to take to just optimize the traffic, that in itself can raise profit for our clients. So having a good relationship with platform providers is crucial for us at A-Teamwork as well. So on both the call side and lead side.
Perfect. I think we're ready to step into round two, which is the main focus of this one is how to scale. I did wanted to ask you guys, how do you think that someone can scale on leads and calls in the business? What advices will you guys give, and how will you handle that? What will be your approach?
Do you want to start with this, Greg, or?
Sure, I can jump in there. So, being in this space for a long time, having run a company that's a leads company, now, helping dozens and dozens of companies do this, the scaling really comes down to, I think, a couple things. First and foremost is adding value. I think the people who come in who have a hard time scaling up don't really have a clear understanding of what value they're adding in the system. And so I think if you're a lead generator, your value is, can you provide scale and quality? And so the people that are on that side, on the lead side, are they generating leads? Can they generate enough? And are they, at a high enough value in terms of quality? Are they keeping out the fraudsters and, people who, the affiliate networks that have bad stuff running through them, on that side? And then the brokers, the ones that scale there, it really comes down to like, are they able to both combine and provide, a resource where, okay, you have multiple subsources, you're not just simply reselling. If you're just, junk in, junk out kind of situation, but you're going through, you're curating a stream. That way a client can come to you, a home service or insurance client. You can be a one-stop shop where they can have a big budget. They can come to you. You have 20 different sources, and then you can provide consistent scale to that client. That's what I think has been helping people scale up, is they realize, hey, there's a value add. I'm consolidating sources, but I'm also the guard dog here. I'm keeping bad stuff out. I'm curating this. I'm understanding what the client's looking for, maybe when the client doesn't even know. And so in terms of scalability, I think the first and foremost is just kind of understanding the value add that you bring there and being really client focused.
I'll take over from here. In terms of the call side, so there's kind of, I would preface everything by saying, and Andrew, you might agree with me, back, 10 years ago, the value of anybody was his secrets and who he knew. I think today it's that culture has changed a lot, really. I see so many people doing webinars, podcasts, teaching, like especially on the media buying side. Media buyers are very open to teach the tricks of the trade, how to set things up. If you reach out to a media buyer or anybody else in the space itself, it's surprising actually how open people are to tell you, hey, look out for this, hey, look out for that. 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. 10 years ago, everybody was like, yeah, leave me alone. Like, I'm not telling you anything. right? So that because of that culture change, I would even say like to if you wanted to grow in volume and quality, tap into those resources, tap into people who've been in the space, who have made the mistakes, right? Because the point is, like, you don't need to make the same mistakes as your forefathers before you, right? History. So that's what I would do, is I would listen to all the trades, how to work around Facebook, like what are the tricks to kind of launching an ad in the right time, so on and so forth. Now, in terms of quality, one thing that I might be partial to this, but is data. Data is important because back in the day, you couldn't really quantify how well or successful an ad was doing, right? Today, you can collect all the Facebook ID, the GCL IDs, bring it into a call tracking platform, and fire that pixel back to your ad manager that lets the ad manager know, hey, this is working. This is actually what's converting offline. So keep spending money here, right? In terms of if you're doing just a regular call campaign or you're buying traffic, you still have data. You can look at average talk times. You can quantify the quality of your calls based on listening to the call itself, or using AI transcription and analysis to identify key points within that call, to identify whether the call was qualified, whether the call was not interested at all. If somebody's not interested, why keep running it? Because something is wrong at the beginning of the whole sales funnel, right? So there's so many tools today, at least on the call side, and I'm sure on the lead side as well, that allow you to look at data. And when you have that data, you're able to really push and optimize. That is what is a big change from what it was 10 years ago and today. And that comes with all the new technology we're using, all the API integrations, letting RedTrack know, letting Facebook know, letting Google know. Everybody is now communicating in the centralized hub. Everybody's taking the online stuff and the offline stuff, which calls are technically offline, right? Because you're making a phone call. Now you're off the page. So that communication is what's going to drive volume and quality. Once you find that sweet spot in an ad or that you're running, if you're generating yourself, you find that sweet spot, you can push more budget on that and stop wasting money on ads that may be generating a lot of buzz and clicks, but ultimately is not generating you conversions, because conversions is what we care at the end of the day. And if you really wanted to get into it with a buyer, the CPAs, right? How much sales are your calls actually generating? Because ultimately the buyer doesn't care how much volume you have. They care about how much sales you're generating. That's the whole kit and caboodle of this whole process. It's sales.
Yeah.
Go ahead. This one. Not much of a debate here on this point. And I think maybe one of the points where Leads does give you a pretty sizable advantage is that you get a ton of data. And the downside is you have to process that. But we do see the people who scale and who do well and who understand volume versus quality is they're looking at the sub IDs, they're running the cost per appointment, they're running the cost per acquisition on that. They're going into the platform, they're blacklisting or they're downgrading those sub IDs or those landing pages that aren't doing well, and they're upgrading and allowing through into better higher tiers, or they're setting up their campaigns in such a way that they're allowing, the results of what's happening, what results they're getting back from their buyers to inform how they're purchasing leads, and that is what ultimately unlocks bigger budgets and allows people to scale.
So and then ultimately, I think the only thing I want to chime in, a couple of things. One is that when you mean quality, it's going back to what Phil said earlier, is that you have to constantly be communicating with your buyer, because and you're not really thinking quality as in how many, if you're a media buyer, for example, whatever my media buying spent was, and then how did that convert to a billable call? Because oftentimes it's so tempting to just look at that and go, well, I'm backing it out because it became a billable call, for example. But you have to go even further down and communicate with your buyer and say, hey, is this backing out for you? Like, is it turning into sales? So really our role is to be like the procure department of all the traffic on behalf of the buyer, all the way to the sale, right? So sometimes, even me, like when I was working at, when I was an affiliate myself or whatever, you forget that because you're so like, honed in on the, the actual like billable calls, right? And then so there's that. But if you really serve, at the end of the day, it's basic. If you serve your customer, your buyer correctly, they will give you a bigger budget and you can scale, right? And another point that I Phil, I 100% agree, and I find it very interesting, and that's why I actually love our industry as well, is that because a lot of campaigns are pretty much unlimited. Like the world is big. Our piece of pie is huge, so we can all like share. Like, no one has to just like take the whole thing by eat it by yourself. So what ended up happening for media buyers is that they really share all that information. And I also noticed that, they just talk about, they don't have secrets. They're like, hey, this is what's working for me. And there's this amazing conversation that goes back and forth. But I think they also do that because they realize if you're going to make that successful, it's not just that one content or this and this and that. It takes a lot of work to make it work. Like literally, you have to A, B, C, D, E, F, G test, and then you have to look at it like almost every hour, and then pause the one that's not working, double down on the one. I mean, that work, it takes so much time that successful media buyers know not everyone is up to doing this. Right. So that's why it's like, even if you share the secret, you're going to have to do a lot of work. So if you do that, then I'm going to take you seriously. So that's kind of what I've been seeing, across the board with the media buyers that are wildly successful, running both on the data side, on the call side as well.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I will add that preface is one of the benefits of the call side is that they're recorded, right? So you actually can QC your calls yourself. I used to do it myself. Like if I had a buyer, I would listen to a bunch of calls and upsetting them. The reason why you want to do that is because you might have a buyer that is a phone jockey that's just like hanging up for no reason, just because the perfect person that's on the line is not the perfect candidate. So having that ability to listen to recordings, to make adjustments, to hold your buyer accountable as well is very important, and it's a huge benefit on the call side because you have that right in front of you. There is no relying on your buyer to say, oh yeah, the calls are bad. Buyers will try to lower down the value of your calls because that means they can get it cheaper, right? Like, so with recordings, you can say, hey, you know what, dude, I listened to a bunch of calls. I know these are sales. Like, where I am with the quality. So there is that level of transparency with the recordings. I mean, of course, there are certain verticals that you can't record or you shouldn't at all. And that's usually the insurance verticals because of the PI information. But other verticals like home improvement, if you're doing anything that doesn't have any personal information that might give away the consumer, recordings are critical. I know individuals that QC every single call that goes through their system, and they have a scoring system that they use, and they're able to, if the buyer comes to them and say, hey, your calls are bad, they'll be able to rebuttal and say, no, that's not true. Here are all the sales. Here are all the reasons. We might have some bad calls, but here a majority are great calls.
Yep. I mean, I will say that definitely is a point for calls where you can QC it by listening to the live calls, and that is always like definitely one of the sticking points on the data side is that you have this lead, it gets passed off, you are relying on the buyer a lot of times to get that disposition report back. But I would say one of the things you do have going for leads is since you have typically a full data lead, it's not a couple data points, you have 30, 40 data points, and you have a lot of very cool third-party services. So we have an app store in Standard Information. We have 25 or 30 different integrated services that you can plug into that. So you can be checking credit scores, the name matches the home, or the phone value, fraud scores. And so there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do now on the data side where you can be improving that if you're not getting access to the buyer dispositions, or if the buyer dispositions are pushed down a little bit to try and in their favor, since it is not quite the same as calls where you can listen to every single one.
I mean, it goes back to what we were discussing earlier, right? It's like the technology is growing so quickly. I mean, the data pending solutions are great, even on the call side. You can literally, when a call comes in, you can ping, get a bunch of data points on the individual. It's stuff like that. And if you're really into data, some people are data nerds, including myself. So you get to really boil down into, do I do better with males? Do I do better with females? Do I do better with homeowners? Do I, that kind of information, you start building a matrix and developing a demographic for your particular vertical that you're operating.
Yeah, for sure. Something that I wanted to ask you guys also, it's like some roadblocks or some problems that you might find when you're trying to scale. And something that we were talking with the team when we were just discussing about the webinar, and I know I talked about it with you, Phil, it's about RTV, and I know you mentioned it earlier, but I do think that when things get like complex, or you're finding yourself in front of a process that it's a bit complex than other ones, it can be a really hard uh, thing to solve. And I wanted to ask you, how do you handle that, or what are your thoughts on RTV and how to scale taking that into account, and also to you, Greg, if you have anything related to it that you can think about that it's kind of similar.
So we're going right into the RTB, the big kahuna, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's time.
So, as a call tracking platform, we definitely have a unique perspective, and I'm sure all the other call tracking platforms have the similar perspective, right? For me personally, the RGB is like keeps me up at night. The problem is in today's process, like back like when RGB first was introduced, it was good for small scale, right? So you had buyer and seller, right? Direct connection. I think we spoke about this a little bit yesterday, Greg. Media Alpha used to do it. They're one of the original guys. They're may not be the original guy, but they're one of the original guys. And they used to send back two bids, two options that you could pick from depending on what worked better for you. But that was just a one-to-one relationship. That was not what we see today. Today, from the call tracking platform, depending on where you sit on the ecosystem, you could be a producer, you could be a broker, right? But we see people, a RTB setup that travels through 4 different people, right? And that adds a level of complexity that was never there before, that latency, right? Because not only are you just sending data and you're pinging from one system to the next system to the next system to the next system, you're also got a human being on the phone call, right? And if one of the chains in this link is not set up correctly, everybody in this whole chain gets no calls through. I think that might have been a lot of the frustration early on when people started using RTB. People are like, I was fine when I was running static, and now that we switched to RTB, I can't get anything through. That's because there's so many people in the chain. Like one ping can go through 4 people, and then it goes all the way to the buyer, and the buyer has to respond all the way back. So you can imagine if one system takes 2 seconds, the next one takes 2 seconds. It's just a building domino effect. One of the things we've done, and I mentioned this earlier, is we can't put the cat back in the bag. So what we did is we started to create a lot of reporting tools that for RTB specifically that allow you to see what's going on within your ecosystem. You see every ping that comes in, every ping that goes out, the times, the details, the responses. So just on a quick look, you can see exactly why a call did not connect. There's always going to be some interesting issues that occur, but the way we've approached it is we've tried to build the tools, we've tried to build the features, we tried to build organic rate limiters to kind of open the runway for your good publishers and punish the bad publishers. So as we go and as it scales, RTB itself, we will adjust to it. We have adjusted to it, but I don't think this is going to ever be something that we stop creating things for it. There's no end goal, no finish line, so to speak. We always have to change as the industry changes.
Yeah. I mean, on that point, Leads is not immune to the same issues. I mean, Ping Post was created for Leads, and so it's a little friendlier there in terms of the timing. But even on the lead side, we see. I mean, literally, the platform is now seeing hundreds of millions of pings a day. So many of those are duplicates and coming back through and looping around. The timeouts are, 3 to 4 times longer. You have, 6 seconds before the whole system times out. So that gives you a lot more leeway, typically, and you can adjust that. But so it gives you more leeway and more time to run those operations, call those third-party services, do filtering and things like that, and you don't have the person sitting on the line. But at the end of the day, I mean that we've put in a lot of time and effort to battle duplicates, to battle that duplicate ping issue where you just, if you see 300 million pings come in every day, that's not everybody in the whole country is looking for a new roof today. That's just unrealistic. So that when we dug into it, there's one ping, especially because they can loop around for a long time on the lead side, it could be duplicated 100 times. And so that takes up a lot of processing power and a lot of time to do that. And so we actually did an analysis of it, and we found that if you block pings after the 3rd ping coming in, it has basically 0 impact on revenue. It has a positive impact on revenue because you're getting rid of the pings that get you rate limited on the buyer side. And you basically no ping that you've seen more than 3 times, like the likelihood of that becoming a sale is like under 1%. So you're not touching your revenue, you're actually increasing it. So that was
Well, I will touch upon something you brought up. So, the RTB world is, I think the word is incestuous, where you can get. I had a friend that was doing a test, and he called his own campaign, and he ended up getting his own cell phone number back like 20 times. And we were at first confused, but then we realized that who he was pinging out was pinging out to their people who was pinging back to him. And to give you some perspective on the scale of RTB, Retriever alone last month, just using Ping Shield, which is a tool we use to block certain pings that shouldn't be coming, we had 3.1 billion requests that we blocked just last month. And that is a small percentage of the total number of requests that we're processing. So, for the viewers, to give you that idea of scale, it's pretty significant, and I'm sure that's something that affects all the platforms involved, because I know that if I'm dealing with that, the other competitors are too. But it's really how to adjust it, and that's part of the reason why we have the RTB log, which records everything that happens, good or bad.
That's really interesting, actually. I think it now that you guys mention it, I also wanted to highlight quality, and I think we're ready to go to round 3, because I heard you, Greg, mentioning duplicates, and there was a question about that in the
Sure.
forms that the attendees filled, and one of them was, how do you deal with quality issues like duplicates or returns or anything that has to do with that? How do you approach that? How can we handle that? I know we have some experience with calls, and we went over that a little bit on our past webinar. But I do want your input too, Phil, because I think it's a pretty important part of the whole bigger picture.
Yeah. At least on the lead side, there's fortunately a lot of levers you can pull, which is nice because you do have a lot of data to deal with. And so instead of information to the platform, for example, you can set a duplicate for the pings, you can set a duplicate threshold. So after the platform's seen the same ping, typically we advise people 3 times, it'll kill that ping and it'll stop that duplicate loop happening. That doesn't really change the quality so much, assuming that those are real-time pings and it's not somebody doing something they shouldn't be doing. But we have on the post side a duplicate detector where if you see the same name or the same phone number or anything related to that lead, you can put a look back period. And typically that'll be like, a couple days all the way to like maybe 60 or 90 days where you've already seen that lead come in, or it can be as far back as the platform will look back. And so you can not be buying leads that you already get. And so in terms of just a quality thing, it's the lowest hanging fruit always for our clients is that duplicate checking, because obviously you can't make a sale to a lead that you've already sold, or a sale to a lead that you're already working that you bought 2 days ago. It's just going to be wasted budget. And so that is definitely a huge thing that lead vendors can do proactively, is turn that on for their buyers, and that's going to massively improve quality, because just duplicate checking alone can really improve an overall campaign performance.
From the call side, I mean, a duplicate could be multiple things. It's not just a simple, use a duplicate lead. Consumers have a tendency to shop around. So if you're operating in a vertical like insurance, they're not just going to call one person and call it a day, right? Or auto insurance. You're going to call multiple people to get a quote, get to see if this is the right fit for me. So similar to how Greg does it is we look at it kind of from a bird's eye view. We provide tools that allow you to divert the call based on duplication indicators, but we also create tools like for big companies that are in the insurance space. We create tools that allow people to re-engage the consumer. So if it's a duplicate call, clearly the consumer has let's say the inclination to potentially move or change their provider, right? So we create tools that allow the user to re-engage the consumer, let it go into a retention line. We know that this particular call ID is on the book of business. So let's try to keep this consumer on the book of business. So we have this feature called the call list support. that allows us to re-engage the consumer and send it back to a specialist within that company that can see, hey, what's the problem? How can we help fix some of the concerns you have? I mean, again, the word duplicate is a tricky one, because yes, you can have duplicates that are consumer coming in more than once. You can have duplicates from a call center agent just trying to pass that call in multiple times. So I think to say duplicate as a whole is a tricky subject. I think it depends on what you're looking at, the problems that you have with that kind of scenario, why it's happening. Duplicates could be bad ads that you're running or misleading ads. So having the data, having the capabilities to make adjustments based on what the actual cause is what's going to make you successful and kind of really maintain that quality. But that's just from the process of generating it on one side, right? The quality is the interaction with the buyers, knowing what you're doing wrong, or ensuring that the quality is maintained. A factory, when they manufacture a product, they don't just make sure the first line of the output from the factory is good. They make sure that every batch that comes out is checked for quality assurance. That's what you should do if you're an intermediary. If you are a producer, you should make sure that your ads are running well. You're not just pushing traffic and not getting conversions, because that's a really quick way to lose a buyer. Because for you as a producer, you're spending money generating the traffic. For the buyer, they have to pay for agents to be on the phone. Like, if you are sending traffic that isn't qualified, their agent's time is taken up when they could have been talking to somebody who's actually qualified. So that is what's important, is to look at it from both the buying, the selling, if you're in the network, from the buyer's perspective as well, if you're producing. So it's not a cut and dry situation. I think there's a lot of variables, a lot of angles we need to look at.
Yeah, I agree with that, and it's very, very helpful. So thank you for sharing it. I think now we're ready to go to our final round, because I thought it would be interesting to see what do you guys think about AI and how can it improve efficiency and everything on leads and calls. We went over it on last webinar for calls, but I do want to encourage Greg to stand out for leads and give his side of the AI.
He's got a lot of AI tools.
Yeah.
That's really good stuff.
We have a lot on the AI side. I mean, we have all the AI tools in the platform that help you set up the campaigns, but this is a little bit outside of leads versus calls. But we also are the first platform to launch ping post appointments, which allows you to have an AI agent take in a lead or a call, qualify them, get them on the phone, and then book that person into an appointment, which you can then auction that appointment off to the highest bidder, which is kind of a whole new step, and it really unlocks AI call centers. So we're seeing a lot of clients, especially the most successful clients, leaning into AI on the lead side, either using AI verification tools or something in the middle to do the quality side, or using AI call centers now themselves, which is actually pretty crazy stuff, and seeing kind of the bleeding edge of that is very interesting. And so, as a final push for the leads, as we see kind of, our perspective as we see AI take off, there's nothing limiting AI from doing 10,000 calls a day. And so you're going to have the leads, that lead data to feed into these AIs. And the better the data you have in, the better output that you're going to get out. And so we see a huge boon for lead demand, just because, the demand on the AI side.
From the call perspective, I'm going to speak about AI more on a bird's eye view manner. There's many AI tools right now that I've seen in the market. There are tools that show burnout rate that you would get if you owned a call center. Agents that are constantly calling 1,000 numbers a day and getting rejected. AIs don't have emotion, so they will keep going, and they have rebuttals for everything. They think much quicker. You have agents that you have AI tools that can be used as a vetting process. So if you generate inbound calls, you can have an AI vet the consumer that's coming in. So you disqualify a lot of the non-qualified individuals. You even have tools that can reschedule appointments if you don't have a buyer that can take it at a given time, because RTB responds back with, "Hey, I got no buyers," right? So you can reschedule call for another time. From our perspective, all these tools are great. We've taken our stance on the matter is we've taken up, we're using AI in a sense where we can either go through a call, we transcribe a call, and analyze a call. We can pull out and extract data that allows us to create reports. So when I say just an example of this is, we can tell you if a call's a sale, not a sale. We can tell you, hey, this is the reason why the call wasn't a success, right? He didn't qualify for this. Not only that, we use the AI to pull out evidence from the call that allows you to see, oh, this is exactly what I'm seeing a lot of my calls come in with these issues. So we can make adjustments to it. This all boils back to scalability, quality, and really leveraging the technology out there. But the way that Greg uses AI in terms of the customer service front, that's great, because there might be simple questions that doesn't require a human being to answer. And I think that's amazing. But I think where AI technology is at this given time, I think in a year from now, we're going to have less AI tools with sound gaps. It's always awkward when the AI is processing it and there's a pause in between. I think we're about a year out, maybe even less, from it actually completely going away. I've heard some amazing AI agents personally. I've heard AI agents be able to distinguish what's being said through a very thick accent, right? And somebody who can call in extremely angry, but somehow the AI was able to rebuttal everything, and then it turned into a sale at the end. So we're very close to it. We're very close to it, and AI can be used for everything, even to this point, coding, right? Like developing tools, like finding the best solutions.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's exciting, and I'm glad that I had you guys input. I do want to highlight also that just sustainable growth, for you to have the sustainable growth, you need to have both leads and calls. I think that as a customer success manager, I've seen really big turnarounds with clients when they are doing bad with leads, and some verticals are performing bad, and then they just have like a complete turn. I think it's really smart to not put your eggs in one basket, and just give it a shot for both. And I think over here we cover like a lot of nice opinions and strategies for this, and I think it will be smart for all of our clients and the attendees to try both. I think it's I don't know if or thoughts, but from my customer success experience, I think it will be the best.
This is the handshake part of the match.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I
mean, I second that. I mean, really, these are sister industries. They go hand in hand. We encourage all of our clients, if they're in leads, they understand it's the same buyers, it's the same general structure. They understand the business. You should be doing calls and leads. I mean, like you said, diversifies. You have more bites of the apple. You can do more. You can get more things with the buyers. You can get more from vendors. You can build big relationships. And so, at least from our side, we always encourage people to do both. And we do really like the Retreaver platform. And so we send people there all the time.
Do me a shameless plug. I mean, look, you got a great platform too. The use of AI, the ability to make changes in the data collection is amazing too. But to your point, doing both to start off with might be a little bit harder, right? But once you get to that point where you're in that rhythm and you understand it, doing both is a no-brainer, because you can make X amount. Like, let's say you're doing you have a lander, and you can generate a call to the lander, right? So during with calls, you're open. The call center, the agent that's buying the call, he's open from 9 to 6. So there's only so much time. So what I've seen people do is, after the 6 p.m., when we know that there's no one able to actually physically talk to the consumer, they start to generate. They switch to a lead process, like a lead bed, like a model. And what that allows you to do is essentially run 24/7, because you're running during the day, during office hours, you're running calls, and then you can even use the data that you're collecting as age leads, 30-day, 40-day, whatever. But you operate 24/7. This might help reduce the cost of how much it costs click because of hours that they're running. The competitiveness might not be as severe during late hours, right? But you're actually still generating money even when you're sleeping. So when you get the opportunity to do it, you should always look into doing both because they work symbiotically. One does not work without the other. Calls won't happen if there wasn't leads. If you had a call center and you had no leads, you had nothing to dial out on.
100%.
Yeah, you wanna give the consumer all options as possible. If you're especially media buying and you're drawn to just picking up the phone call, like a call and like talk to an live agent, or some people don't want to do that and they want to fill out a form. So, I mean, just going all the way down to the basic. I mean, that's the psychology of a consumer. You might as well play in both fields and then generate a good quality lead.
Yep.
So. Yeah,
it's introverted and extrovert. Right? Extrovert's like, I don't want to do paperwork. I'm just going to call up, and it's going to be like, okay, I don't want to be called right this second. I want to be called.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think also in the day, like, there's only so many people. It's a little bit of a zero-sum game insurance in any given town or city, and so if you give as many options as possible to allow that consumer to, get connected with a service provider, that's going to be the winning strategy. And so, doubling down on everything you can, I think, is going to only help business.
I agree. Well, I thank you all for joining this. Please check your inbox. We sent you a little souvenir, a little something, a little surprise. So check it out and fill out the form and let us know if you have more questions, because I know there were a lot of them and we couldn't answer all of them. So please feel free to let them on the form and we will get back to you. And we can also schedule a second call. So I do want to really thank you all the attendees, and you, Greg, and Phil, and you, Andrew, too, because this has been...
Thank you.
Back for another webinar from different topic, whether it's both of you together or separately. I also noticed from the community here that chimed in to listen to us, there's some heavy hitters here. So, this is our second webinar, but we're going to do this, on a monthly basis. So, if you have any interest in, becoming part of our guests, also feel free to reach out, and good to see some of the familiar names here to support us. So thank you very much for attending, and we look forward to more communication in the future. So thank you.
All right, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Bye.